So Nancy, can I get you to read the scripture reading for this morning?
Scripture reading is from Revelation 21, verses 1 through 6. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw a holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them, they will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away." And the one who was seated on the throne said, "See, I am making all things new." Also he said, "Write this, for these words are trustworthy and true." Then he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end."
Thank you, Nancy. So if you stand outside my kitchen, oh, you are so right, I dropped the ball. Do it. You can look one way and you can see the first sampler that I ever stitched. It was from a kit, and the idea was that colonial girls were supposed to complete their first embroidered ABCs by the time they were 10. I finished mine by the time I was 11. But if you stand in that same spot, you will also see my ordination sampler, which was not a typical product of the 1700s for girls of any age. And on another wall is a sampler that I stitched as I went through a really tough time in my life before getting my feet under me. And there are pieces that my mother and my grandmother stitched. And each one tells a story. And they are part of a larger story of the women in my family that is being told by having all of them hung together in one place where you can see them all together. I see them every day as I run out to exercise or to run errands or to come to church. You guys must have something like that, right? If not pictures, then there is something. A music collection, or a special Christmas meal that has dishes from both sides of the family, or a favorite dish that had to change and change and change until it was gluten-free or vegan or whatever. Each song or dish or photo is unique, and it tells its own story, but they are all part of a larger story of how you got here and where you are going to. The book of Revelation is like that. It's like an art gallery. There are scenes that are described in detail, and each image is complete in itself, but also at the same time is a key part of understanding that wider story, that bigger picture. The book of Genesis is like that too, a picture gallery of where we came from. Revelation tells us where we are heading. Today's reading says God is the Alpha and the Omega, the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet, where all the words come from. But it also says that God is the beginning and the end. The Greek word for beginning means not just the first thing, but the origin of a series. And the Greek word for end means not the last thing, but the goal that everything was heading towards, the goal that everything was building towards. John of Patmos, who wrote Revelation, called himself a prophet, meaning that God had spoken to him so that he might speak to others about God's intent for us. John wrote to 7 churches in what is now Turkey, trying to help them endure a tough time of persecution. Now I know there are people who see the book of Revelation as a series of super secret codes that are there for us to crack. But I think that diminishes the service that John was doing for those first century communities who were being threatened with destruction and with death. John was offering them images to help them make it through a truly tough time, because God had given him those visions for those communities. So before we overinterpret the images as if we here in brand new 2023 were the intended audience, let's look at what is in that gallery of images. There is a new city coming down out of heaven from God, a new Jerusalem. So the goal, where we have always been headed, is to live in this world, not in heaven. The new city bears the old city's name, Jerusalem. So our history up to now is leading to what will happen. Yes, God will intervene. We can't get there from here on our own. But this history, this world, it matters. God will join us in this world. God will be with God's people. Everything that makes this world so hard to take, the hate, the injustice, the anger, the violence, all that passes away. God is tender with us, wiping away tears from each one of us, from each of our cheeks. The first century Christians just wanted to live their lives. They didn't want to worship the Roman emperor. They didn't want to have to lie about whether they would be willing to do so. And they didn't want to be killed in some horrible way to serve a lesson for others. God is making all things new. Not all new things, but all things new. So this world will be remade, but it will still be this world. It isn't a do-over. It isn't a blow everything up and start again. It's a take what we have, given where it all began, and bring it to the goal it has had all along. And look how connected everything is. Yes, God is sending a city down from heaven, and yes, God is telling us that these words are trustworthy and true. There is definitely a vertical line in these images, but there are so many horizontal ones. It's a city where we survive because we are connected to everyone else. God lives with us, with all of God's people. God's grace intervenes and then ripples out into this world, into our lives, like the waves in the River Jordan. That's the goal. So as we sit here on this brand new, barely used first day of 2023, I wonder where this image, this story, is being told in your life. What is the new thing that God is offering you, straight from God, that will ripple out to those around you? What part of your history, of your story, is being made new so that it can bring you to the goal that has been there all along, of living with God in this world without mourning and crying and tears? You may only catch a quick glimpse of the canvas as you head out to exercise or run errands or come to church, but you need to look. There is something new in this new year. There is a way that images or songs or dishes on the table are ready to connect your current life to the new one God is offering you. If only you take a minute to see what changes in your life might be those ripples of a bigger story being sent down from heaven. Your history, however full it is of tough times, however firmly connected with a wider history or holy novel, your history is sacred. It is a part of what built the old earth and the old heaven, and yes, it will pass away and with God's grace, but it is part of getting to God's goal for this world. So go out into the world looking for newness that is dropping down and spreading out into this world. Go out and look for God, making all things